Okay, I think we're about ready to start. Alrighty. Okay, let's start with our usual membership greetings. Give your name and call sign as we start around.
Hi, I'm Leon, MTAB. Luis, KM4ADB.
Ray, KJ4CNN.
Right.
John, KB4ALT.
John, K1NME.
Ross, KM4HCF.
Scott, K4EL. Mike, W8888. Oh,
Teresa, KM4DLT.
and W3B. Pete, K6B of A. Ron, WA6, YOU. Jack, KI4SC.
Brendan, KM4HRR.
Larry, KM4MAL.
I'm Matt, KG7X.
Gary, KJ4PC.
KM4CTC.
Mark, N4EE.
Steve, N5SJ.
Okay, I guess the next thing is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I looked at them, looked them over, they looked okay. Do we have a
Motion to approve?
yeah, motion to approve? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, run through some of the reports from officers, and by the way, tonight we're going to have to do without all the groaners. Bill's won't be here, so we'll see if we can work our way through that anyway. No good jokes at this point. Not even any bad ones either. Yeah, we got that on my list. We got any new people here tonight? Okay, stand up and give us a little brief about yourself.
Appreciate you guys. I took my EE test, you guys, three months ago. I did technician general and extra because my old license expired. So really appreciate you guys making that opportunity for me to take that test available. And I thought I'd come in and hang out with you for a little bit.
Good, we're glad to have you. So, I don't think we have any here from Bill. The membership Harry was, but he's not here tonight. Financial's not here. Repeater, Brendan.
I'll grab that microphone. Hello. Hey. So the bracket holding the link antennas for the 2-meter antenna over in Vienna has been replaced thanks to John Birch. Thank you, John Birch. So that's been fixed, and he kind of pointed the Yagis, and I think he got them pretty right on. Had a report that the remote receive system over at Tyson's, co-located with the NVFMA gear, wasn't functioning properly, so I went over with Bruce Freund, K7BC, a good friend of the club and a fellow board member with me over at NVFMA as well. And we found that the receive side, something happened, an electrical something or other, or somebody bumped it by mistake, or maybe an evil person did it on purpose, but we don't care. It's fixed. Somebody bumped a channel button and changed it to channel 4, which requires a PL tone. So anybody that thought they were using the remote receive site wasn't. Hence all the bad audio reports at low power from over in that general area, because they were probably hitting the Vienna repeater at a half a watt and it just, just wasn't working. Anyway, we put it back on channel 1 and got lots of good reports about the system working fine. So if you're over that way on that side of the hill, you should have good luck coming into the 2-meter repeater now. And did a whole bunch of asking around of people smarter than me, and it pretty much qualifies everybody in the room right now. Our 2-meter main antenna is canted somewhere between 8 and 10 degrees on top of our tower, and I think we proved that it's not the tower, that it's actually the antenna that's tilted. So most people say that it's not a concern. Like, I've heard anything from a quarter of a dB to 3 dB down, so that's a pretty big range. But most people said it's not worth the effort because it's a real pain to climb all the way up to the top of that 64-foot tower and undo all those rusted screws and get that thing straight. The easiest way to do it, I've heard, is to get a cherry picker or a fire engine and get up there on the side. And, we haven't yet asked Vienna Fire if they're willing to do it for us, but we might do that if we decide to make the fix, because I wouldn't want to put somebody up there on top of the tower and try to deal with rusty bolts. Or a gin pole. We do have a gin pole we could borrow for that purpose as well. Anyway, that's it for repeaters. We have repeaters, and they're working.
Here, great. Also, other special events, we have Field Day. Gary Mannering, I think, say a few words about Field Day. There.
Yeah, that should be it.
Okay. Pete asked me to take over Field Day, and you know what happens when Pete asks you to do something. You don't really hesitate. You don't really want to say no. My goal is to do no harm, like CERT, and don't muck it up. And at the end of the Field Day, have most of the members, or at least some of the members, still be willing to talk to me. So those are my main goal and objectives. Also want to say that what has worked in the past, we want to repeat that and not change anything. There might be some tweaks along the way. As one friend I talked to mentioned, that there are some twists and turns of a different ingredient maybe in the recipe that I put into the mix, and that might make things taste a little differently, but it's not to change the recipe. Also, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time is my approach. So fortunately, a lot of things have been organized already, and there's many people in leadership positions that have marched down the path in the past to take over responsibilities for antennas and the rigs and the setups and the meals and the food. Two of the most critical parts of it, Pete has already told me he's taken care of, which is the porta potties, and the second part is the permit to operate in the park. So I was glad that both those key critical elements are already done. I won't talk for a long time, but I just want to mention also that I want to challenge everybody in the club to participate in whatever way you can. If you're into the contesting and you want to operate CW, by all means, do that and coordinate with the team leads for those stations to work a schedule and get as much time and effort as you can on that. Same with phone or single sideband. The date is the last full weekend in June. And one of the first things that Pete gave me when I went over to his house and met with he and some other people is a manila folder with some context that included the rules. And let me tell you, you'd have to be a Philadelphia lawyer, a statistician, and a serious contester to understand all these multipliers and points on that. So I'm going to leave that up to other members of the club that have done it in the past. I don't mind doing the report, but want people to help me with that. The only other thing I would add is I would like to assist the people that are in the public education and public involvement and club involvement part of it more. I think there's more banners, poster boards, canned slideshows, many other things we could do. I did go online and found a flyer on what Field Day is for the ARRL's perspective, and it is contest and it is making as many contacts as possible using emergency power. But it's also a picnic. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be public education, public outreach. And I see a lot of opportunity for all of us to mentor and share each other skills, abilities, passions, whether it's operating satellites or operating
we're done.
Operating satellites or operating QRP rigs, or Bob I was chatting to at the QRP event, and he was telling me about the Kiwi SDR he has online at his home. And I'd be fascinated to learn more about how that's set up and used. I think there's a lot of projects people could bring to field day and have near the mess tent when meals aren't on. People could wander over and discuss things with them. So anyway, those are some of my ideas. I'm going to pass it on to Leon to talk a little bit about the where the rubber meets the road, the antenna setup and the layout.
Okay, thanks. And I think we should all say thanks to Gary for stepping up to take this on. So. Okay, so I just want to give a quick update on where we're at in thinking about stations and antennas. We've tried this year to get a little bit farther ahead of the game than we have in previous years, so I'm very grateful that a group of members have gotten together to help us organize our antennas. If you could just stand up so that the group here could see who's contributed. John, Jack, who else is in here? Lee, is Lee around? Anyway, just show yourselves, just so we can, just for a second, so just to see our volunteers here. So yeah, anyway. So this group has been, we all got together and had a meeting and made a proposal about the station configuration that I'll talk about in just a second. We worked back and forth on a proposed plan which has some innovations, and then we did a walk around the field to make sure that we could do what it is we want to do. So here's the quick summary of what we're thinking. So we're going to do our traditional four, I'll call them basic stations, the 2 CW stations and the 2 single sideband stations. The stations will be broken up 40 and 15 meters with the hope maybe that 15 meters will open up. We don't know, who knows. And then sideband and CW on 20 and 80 meters as we've done before. And then we'll, like we did last year, we're going to have a digital and what we're calling an opportunity station that will have access to antennas, and some of the antennas that we have set up will use FT8. There's a new mode called FT4, which is supposed to be a contest mode that we're thinking may be available at field day. Time will tell, and Doug, AK4AO, is right on top of this, so if there's an opportunity to operate FT4, Doug and his group will be ready to operate that. And then in addition to that, Doug is going to be doing a little bit of spotting as well, just to keep track of band openings and so forth, to steer the other stations in a good direction. We're also going to have the GOTA station this year, as usual. I think Pete's got a handle on that. Thank you, Pete. We're going to try to get a satellite station going. I'm not sure who's going to run that one yet. And then we expect that Mad Max will be out there doing the usual UHF, VHF activity. So John is planning on being there. So here's where we're at with regard to stations. So we have station captains for the 40-meter CW station. John Schell has volunteered to take that lead. Jack AI4SV is going to do the CW station for 20 and 80. Bill Mims and I are going to do the sideband station for 20 and 80. And we're still looking for a band captain for the 40-meter sideband station. So if you have any interest in doing that, we have a lot of the gear and a lot of the materials that are needed. It's just the job of the band captain really is to make sure things get put together and the station runs, and coordinate with the antenna folks to make sure the antenna is put together. And I've done it for a couple of years, and it's been a lot of fun actually to do it. So if we have a volunteer out there who'd be willing to do it, we'd love to have you step forward. So we now know the what. The next question is, how are we going to do this? We think we have most of the antennas taken care of. Lee has just walked into the door and very grateful, has very graciously offered to help deal with the 40-meter antennas. One of the innovations we're going to have this year to help us with interference is we'll have the 2 40-meter Moxons that we're going to use for transmitting, but we're also going to set up a 40-meter receive station at the bottom of the field with a preamplifier on it that will be split between the stations so that we can separate the receive from the transmit, and we're hoping that we'll be able to eliminate some of the interference. We're also going to place a couple of vertical antennas with the hope that the cross-polarized antennas will prevent some interference as well. So we're trying some new things this year with the antennas. and we'll be looking forward to your help. One thing I'm thinking about is, and then I'm going to be quiet, is getting some teams together to assemble the masts and push the antennas up, and I'm hoping that if we can have a crew that'll do that, we'll get the antennas together, the mast vertical, and then when the time is right, the same team can just go from mast to mast to mast and push them up and tighten them down. And then I'm also hoping that we can get a team of folks who love spud guns, who will be willing to get the ropes over the trees so that we can put the dipoles up. So that's the current state of affairs with the antennas in the station. So any questions? Okay, thanks to everyone who's been helping with this.
Okay, the next thing here is, I think Brendan has got a public service announcement that he wants to make. Might as well.
Hi, I'm Brendan. I have a public service announcement. Hi. So just a reminder, on June 2nd, Vienna Wireless Society and Fairfax County Aries Races has been asked to support the American Diabetes Association Tour de Cure, and we still have a whole bunch of open spots. So get off your asses and sign up. Thanks.
Okay. You've heard the word. So next, I think Jack, AI4SV, wants to say a couple of words about Meteor Scanner.
Yeah, so a short announcement. It didn't happen. We got rained out. The intent was that it would be a public-facing event. We didn't see much point in setting up ourselves in a field at night with nobody around. For what it's worth, we did set it up a week before in a different field on generator power. It worked. We made contacts. We're good to go. Whether we do it again depends a little bit. I'll also discuss with the board. Maybe we'll try it locally, maybe in Nottoway Park, the Sky Meadow, so that they would be very happy to have us come to one of these again in the future, and we'll try to work it a little bit better in terms of a rain plan. So I think it'll still happen. We'll give you a rain check.
Okay, I think we're ready to start the first part of the program. We'll get Pete to who's going to talk about VWS contacts with the International Space Station. Yeah.
One of the things that I really enjoy about this club is that we have a variety of activities, and from field day to meteor scatter and things. And also we set up where we could talk with one of the astronauts on the International Space Station. And it was a very exciting time. Set up all the equipment. We have the tracking antennas. And actually most of the thing I can do is just show you the video, and you can see everything that took place in there. The first few minutes is going to be a news clip that was put on the news, and so it'll come across like a news report. Then there'll be some kind of a break in between, and then there'll be Tom Aslan, or the club, actually making their part of what it took to set up the equipment and how it all worked and how it integrated with the International Space Station. It's pretty exciting. One thing, I would point out two things. One, as you're watching the video, look in the lower, they once start broadcasting, look in the lower left-hand corner, and you'll see a picture of the directional antenna inset inside the big picture. And as as the space station is going by, you can watch the antenna tracking, and it shines, and it just follows that space station pretty well. Second thing is, notice the people that are there, the personnel. See how many people you recognize that are in this video. Now, of course, this is not the entire club out there. It's probably maybe 20 people participated. But see how many of those 20 people that were there in 2007 are still active today. So it'll give you an idea of some of the work that Mike does on keeping track of people that show up and don't show up. Well, here's a chance to take a look at a video and see who's still showing up after, 12 years. I'm going to see whether I can make this thing work, and it's pretty exciting. I think I'll stop it after the news break and then see if there's any questions, and then we'll go on into the second half of it. All right. If I do this, I think it's, is that number changing down there? Yep. Well, that's what we want to start with. I hope so. Well, I can make it. I can make it louder. Whoa. When you hear that, is that?
Put the microphone here.
The Vienna Wireless Society, Commander Williams is answering questions in an unusual science assembly for elementary students.
Well, Sunny Williams is a friend of mine and my husband's, and when I heard that her launch was coming, I talked to her on the phone, and I said, is there any way we can talk to you in space, thinking no, but she said yes, just find some ham radio operators. So I literally went on the internet, looked for something close, and I found the Vienna Wireless Society, and so we got with them, and then I talked to people at NASA, and we became a crew pick with Sunny, and she got 3 crew picks, so this school was one of them.
The assembly was quite an undertaking for everyone involved, with collaboration on all fronts. The Vienna Wireless ham operators started building their stations 2 weeks before the event. FCPS logistics and engineering staff helped run the feed through closed-circuit television to other students in the school. On top of all that, there was a short window of only a few minutes that the conversation could happen, since the space station constantly moves and needed to be in range of the radio waves so the students could talk to Commander Williams.
We have 2 complete radio stations established here at the school. We have radio equipment here in the gym. We have antennas up on the roof, and things, while they're powered on the regular wall power, everything is also powered on backup batteries. So we're prepared for any contingency to continue with contact.
My name is Nikki Sprague. What are your daily activities? Over.
Hi, Nikki. Well, every day is different. We do all sorts of things from spacewalks, which we call EVAs, to robotics works. We have a robotic arm outside, which we use to connect different parts of the space station with, to science experiments, as well as just cleaning up.
We had this event so that children would really increase their understanding and their enthusiasm for the space projects, whether it's the International Space Station or the Space Shuttle or meteorology. It's a science that waxes and wanes. This was a good way to get enthusiasm drummed up for the space sciences, and it's a big part of our curriculum, especially in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade.
When I was a first grader, we would come into the gym for an Apollo launch on a black and white TV, and the whole school was in the gym. And now, one generation later, my kids can talk to somebody live in space. You know, who knows what will happen for them and their children.
For School Scene, I'm Margaret Kivlin.
There we go. Oops. Yeah, well, we got the bar back. See, there was one thing I was going to say. Oh, yes, you'll see some sweat as we're trying to make contact here. This is kind of interesting. And you'll see all the gurus coming and hovering over the transceiver, and then they disappear, and then they hover over it again. Finally, things work out. It was nothing bad. The contact went. So this person here, excuse me, thank you. This person here is Tom Aslan. He was a member of the club for many, many years, did a lot of good work for the club. He is now in Arizona, but he was up here in 2007 and took the lead on the antennas. And I think the only other point I made was the sweat that was going on there, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute.
This is our primary antenna. What we have is a steered in elevation and azimuth cross-polarized or circular polarized cross Yagi. Right now the beam is pointed north at 0 degree elevation. When a satellite pass occurs, the beam will turn to point in the acquisition of signal angle, which is 220 degrees. It will then arc across the sky and down to 56 degrees or about where it will set. So this is our primary antenna. We have a power amp downstairs, actually in our tent, and that power amp is about 150 watt power amp, and it also has a preamplifier. We have 1/2 inch heliacs, 30 foot of it, that'll go to the output of the amplifier, and then regular coax down to the radio room. Okay, what we have here is a Lindenblad antenna. This is a circular polarized antenna on the directional and maybe circular up to maybe 50 degrees. We have a inline preamp, and this preamp has enough gain to drive the system noise figure down fairly low. We are powering the preamp from inside here, where we have a 34 amp hour battery, a charging power gate, and a 10 amp power supply. And so we can survive losing power, and our preamp still works. This is our first backup antenna if something happens with our main steered Yagi array. This is our second backup antenna. We do not have a preamp on this, and it goes directly to the back of the second FT847. So this is, if something happens in our earlier backup, we showed you the Lindenblad, then we switch to this antenna, and this is vertically polarized, omni, and has a null straight up. So it should be okay for our 50 degree pass today, although we expect to be using our primary antenna, the steered Yagi array.
K4HTA. How come?
Kilo 4 Hotel Tango Alpha, this is November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra, over.
Anyone that says K4HTA, how copy? Anyone that says K4HTA, how copy?
Kilo Hotel Tango Alpha, this is November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra, over.
Anyone that says K4HTA, how copy? Anyone that says K4HTA, how copy? Anyone that says, this is K4HTA, over.
Yeah, over.
Anyone that says K4HTA, you copy?
We got you loud and clear. Hello, Virginia Run Elementary School. It's good to hear you.
Great to hear you, Sonny. Are you ready for the first question?
Absolutely.
My name is Nicholas Joseph. How high above Earth are you, over?
Hi, Nicholas. We're only about 200 to 250 miles above the Earth. That's about just the distance between here, Washington, D.C. to New York. So when you think about that, you can think about how thin our atmosphere is that's protecting our Earth. Over.
My name is Alice Killen. How do you eat, over?
Hi, Alex. That's a great question. It is a little bit difficult to eat because everything flies around. But luckily, it's stuff that's usually stuck together, like some type of casserole, and we have it in a can so it doesn't get too far away. Sometimes we have to catch it, though. But we usually just have to heat up our food. We don't have to really prepare it. Over.
My name is Luca Manuel. Is it pitch black in space besides the stars, over?
Hi, Luke. As a matter of fact, it is. I think it's the blackest color black I've ever really seen in my life. There's no atmosphere up here to make the sky seem a little bit blurry or milky. It is absolutely clear, and it's really, really black out in space. Over.
My name is Elliot McPhee. Tell us about the layers in your spacesuit, over.
Well, we have lots of layers that we wear for a spacewalk. First, we have long underwear. Secondly, we put on top of that a cooling garment just in case we get hot. We have water circulating around to cool us. And then there's a rubberized suit, which is the pressurized suit. And on top of that is a layer for meteorite protection and also thermal protection. So many layers on the spacesuit. Over.
My name is Lane Feetash. How and when did you decide you wanted to be an astronaut, over?
Well, I'm a helicopter lady, and when I went down to Johnson Space Center for a visit, and I met a bunch of people, not only military pilots and helicopter pilots, but physicists, chemists, veterinarians, doctors that were all astronauts, and I thought, oh, what the heck, maybe I could be one too. Over.
My name is Nadia Waymeyer. What kinds of things are you doing to help the future ISS expeditions, over?
Hi, Donna. Make sure you tell your parents I said hi. And what we're doing up here is paving the way, hopefully, for more than 3 people to live, maybe 6. And also doing science work that will help us have your generation go back to the moon and onto Mars. Over.
My name is Chloe Crayon. How does the air get into the space station, over?
Hi, Chloe. That's a great question. Air is brought up here by 2 spacecraft, the Progress and also the Space Shuttle. And then we make air by dividing water, H2O, into H, hydrogen, and O, which is oxygen. And that's how we get some of our air. Over.
My name is Ellen Waymeyer. How is day-to-day living different there than here, over?
Hi, Ellen. Well, day-to-day living is a lot of fun up here because we have a great view of our beautiful planet. What's sort of cool about living here is you can work on the ceiling, you can work on the wall, you can work on the floor, and it all feels sort of the same. So you really can take advantage of the environment up here. What's a little different about eating and working with things that aren't...
And that's the end of that. So, any questions? Oh, yes, thank you. How many people do you recognize on the film? 2007. Pardon me? Oh, yeah, Pete Norlaw, right. But he's not coming. How many people you see there that still come to meetings? John Transu, right. Yeah, and everybody else has gone off and done different things, but we are, I guess you can say our membership is rather dynamic. In 12 years, one person still shows up. But there are other people that are in the background that you don't see there. But I just found it kind of interesting to see that there was one face that I could recognize. Yes, sir.
Was the antenna programmed to follow the actual signal, or just to point where it thought the thing should be?
It followed the actual signal. It was tracking the signal strength, and then it just kept tracking it across there. Did you see the beads of sweat? Yeah. Well, you know, no matter how much preparation you do, I'm not sure what the problem was there, but it.
Murphy works overtime.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, well, that's
Space station was on the wrong.
Okay. Well, that would cause a problem, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a clip on this somewhere that actually aired on, I think it was I think it was on Channel 4. There was a little 1 or 2 minutes worth.
Well, that was the beginning. That was the first part of that section.
That was the Channel 8, whatever.
Oh, okay, so, all right.
There actually was a Channel 4. It made the Channel 4 news as well.
Okay, well, that didn't make it onto this disc. Anyway, any questions? Anybody want to do it again? Yeah, it's kind of expensive, you know, by the time you get launch that ISS and feed those astronauts up there. Pardon me?
We'll just use the one that's there.
Yeah, there you go. All right, thank you very much. And I'll give it back to Howard.
Okay, let's take a little break, maybe 10 minutes, and get refreshments, and then come back here about 5 till and or so, and then we'll go with the main program. Yeah, who is the committee on the refreshments tonight? Hmm? Oh, I think Rebecca and Steve. So, okay, let's give Rebecca a hand for the refreshments.